Eftal is an old mage who wants to become the strongest, but fails because his stats are absolute cheeks. However, everything changes when he gets reincarnated as a young man with all his powers from his past life, making him a god-level mage. Overshadowed to overpowered, our story starts 400 years ago, when four powerful warriors are battling fiercely against the Demon King. One of those brave warriors is Eftal, a skilled wind magic user who fights valiantly alongside the sword-wielding hero and his three mages. Together, they manage to defeat the Demon King and bring long-awaited peace to the kingdom. Because of their incredible heroics, the four sorcerers face the king himself and are awarded the elite title of Emperor, each representing their own respective elemental magic. Eftal knows that the Emperor title is usually reserved strictly for nobles, so having his name written among them makes him tear up with pride as he is officially crowned the Wind Sage and the Lightning Emperor. That glorious day ends with the four of them being cheered by the crowds, a day Eftal never forgets even decades later, knowing his sacrifice to spend 40 long years learning magic did not go to waste. Now an old man, Eftal spends his days peacefully training his young students. Among them is Merlin, a demonic child he once saved after her mother died in a chaotic battle, though he suspects she does not remember the incident or how Eftal took the lives of so many demons that day. In the middle of a routine training session, Merlin suddenly offers Eftal a chance to rest, but he assures her that he is fine. She then urges him to teach her next-level magic, proudly claiming that she is capable enough as the Lightning Emperor's best disciple. Eftal asks her why she is in such a hurry, and she starts to say something important, but decides to keep it to herself. Later, little Merlin heads off into the deep woods alone, determined to prove her strength as Eftal's top student. She walks toward a dark cave with a monster hidden inside, telling herself deep down that she needs to become strong enough so her master can finally rest and avoid his tragic fate. She goes inside, but just moments later, she is running back out in a total panic, realizing her level 4 magic is not enough. She braces herself to cast a level 6 magic spell, and when the werewolf pops out, she detonates and electrocutes the monster. However, it fails to stop the beast, and the werewolf strikes her back. In that terrifying moment, she closes her eyes, ready to die. Suddenly, another massive lightning bolt strikes, and her master appears, furious to find her deep in the woods after he explicitly told her not to go. He tells her how she possesses the greatest potential among all his students, and that he does not want her to rush mastering her abilities. Suddenly, the werewolf gets right back up behind Eftal, but refusing to let his lesson be cut short, Eftal detonates a level 10 magic spell, completely turning the werewolf to a crisp. Later, he takes Merlin back to his place to check on her injuries, but he suddenly starts coughing up blood, which he knows is caused by his worsening disease. Merlin quickly rushes to his aid and reveals that she already knew about his disease for some time, which is the exact reason why she wanted to become strong quickly, so he does not have to teach her anymore and can finally rest. Hearing that deeply touches Eftal, but he gently tells her that with the little time he has left, he cannot afford to rest from training her or himself. When Merlin asks him why, he explains that he wants to keep teaching students like her, and that he always wanted to become the strongest sorcerer in the world. She asks why he keeps pushing, and he explains that just like any sorcerer, he wants to be the absolute best, though deep down he accepts that he might never reach that level. Merlin refuses to accept that, claiming the Lightning Emperor is the strongest of them all. However, the old man has long accepted the harsh truth that, compared to his younger peers and their natural talent, he was always a step behind. The next morning, one of his students urgently brings him a report from the Flame Emperor, who has just made a massive discovery regarding magical aptitude. When Eftal reads the details, he is amazed and expects no less from a true genius like the Flame Emperor. With the instructions in hand, they set up an experiment using 4 vials to determine a person's magical aptitude. Eftal starts with Merlin, placing her hair into the 4 vials. The liquids inside change color to represent the 4 different elements, with some vials showing much stronger colors than others. Eftal determines that Merlin has an S-rank magical aptitude for wind and water, and a B rank for earth and fire. Having trained Merlin since she was little, Eftal knows the experiment is 100% accurate. He realizes this discovery will completely change the face of magic, as it allows them to identify a mage's potential from birth. Out of curiosity, Eftal insists on checking his own magical aptitude. Despite already being an emperor, deep down he wants to know if he ever possessed the talent or potential to become the strongest after spending years training harder than anyone else. With his students' help, they place his hair in the vials, but to everyone's shock, none of the vials change color, meaning he never had any aptitude for any elemental magic and was never blessed by the spirits. Refusing to believe it, Eftal and his students try repeatedly, but get the exact same result every time. The harsh reality hits Eftal, and that the reason he could never surpass the other emperors was simply because he was never blessed with natural talent in the first place. Devastated by the truth, his sickness gets worse, and he spends his final days isolated in his room away from his students and Merlin. On his deathbed, he admits that it pains him to know his dream of becoming the greatest was nothing but a lie, as he could never overcome raw talent. Wishing for more time, he closes his eyes for the last time. However, he wakes up to face the goddess who reincarnated him decades ago. Eftel remembers that this was actually his second life. Before ever becoming the Lightning Emperor, he was reincarnated by this goddess who gave him the special skill Indomitable, allowing him to work toward his goals without ever giving up. The goddess reminds him that he is about to be reincarnated a second time and offers to give him another skill alongside double growth speed. Eftel rejects the extra boosts and simply asks for more time to get stronger, as he already possesses all the magical knowledge he needs. Impressed that he reached the level of an emperor without any initial blessing, the goddess grants his wish. Eftel wakes up moments later in the body of a little Jit 4 centuries later, with all of his past life magical knowledge completely intact. He walks downstairs and looks in the mirror to remind himself who he is, but his hot mama hugs him to let him know breakfast is ready. While eating, he remembers a method using water to detect magical aptitude, so he hurries outside to try it. Just as expected, the test reveals he possesses 0 magical aptitude, just like in his past life. Knowing this, he realizes this life might end the same way, capped at level 10. Suddenly, an enraged red-eyed dragon flies past. Seeing soldiers chase after it, Eftel's past instincts as a protector urge him to help, but he stops himself, remembering he is no longer the Lightning Emperor. He recalls the glorious spell he created in his past life named after himself, Eftel. The spell suddenly triggers on its own and detonates on the dragon, turning the lizard bird into crispy bacon. Eftel stands in complete shock, realizing that in this new life as a little Jit, he not only retained his past knowledge but already possesses the peak power of his previous life. 3 years pass, and Eftel spends his days studying this new world and magic. One day, his blonde-haired brother Fraser comes to visit the house, and he first gives Eftel's mom, Elia, some money for that month's expenses. He then turns his attention towards Eftel, and when he sees that his little brother is studying an advanced magic book, he promises to bring Eftel more books, which makes Eftel happy. Eftel then asks Fraser when he can meet his dad, and Fraser sadly tells Eftel that his father still hasn't had time for Eftel. Hearing that, Eftel grieves his family's situation, where his father, Duke Orcott of the Kingdom of Azul, who is the direct descendant of the Lightning Emperor, but refuses to acknowledge Eftel or his mother. The Duke has his wife and mistresses, who all gave birth to offspring with magical aptitude, but after they found out that Eftel had none, the Duke and his mistresses shunned Eftel and his mother to live in the middle of nowhere. Fraser promises that he will talk to their father about it, and looking at his blonde brother, Eftel is grateful that at least his brother is a kind man who is willing to help him and his mother. During tea time, Fraser asks Eftel the reason he's studying so hard and what he wants to do in the future. Eftel instantly tries to tell his brother about who he really is and how he wants to go to the Magic Academy, but Elia quickly shuts him up and answers for him, saying that she thinks it's best for Eftel to go to the military academy and learn swordsmanship, wanting to protect him. Fraser thinks it's a great idea, considering that he himself joined the military school after he wanted to rebel against being born in a magical family. He then takes Eftel out to train swordsmanship, and Eftel recalls how Fraser always only taught him the basic magic and military knowledge, now seeing that Fraser always wanted Eftel to join military school. But Eftel refuses to let that slide and tells Fraser his real desire to join the Magic Academy. Hearing that, Fraser consults his brother, trying to teach him that sometimes dreams don't come true. But despite his limitations, Eftel insists on his dream, believing that if he joins the Magic Academy, he can find a way to break his magical limit and become stronger. Seeing his brother's determination, Fraser agrees to recommend him for the Magic Academy as long as Eftel can copy the magic spell Fraser is about to do. Believing that Eftel has no hope, Fraser does a magical incantation and uses a level to win magic that cuts down a tree. Fraser fully believes that his brother couldn't follow after that, but Eftel uses a level 4 spell, which completely cuts through the whole forest, shocking Fraser. He couldn't believe seeing someone able to cast a spell without incantation, knowing that only a sage who trained for decades can do that. Fraser anxiously asks his brother how he could use advanced magic, and Eftel decides not to tell the truth, so he tells Fraser that he simply absorbs knowledge from books like he's the next Einstein. He then quietly admits that he could actually go to level 10, and that instantly knocks Fraser out cold from shock, which confuses Eftel. He realizes that there is something wrong with this world, seeing how the guards were so shocked to see a level 10 spell against a dragon and how his brother reacted to his ability. He then reads through history books and finds out that the magical culture of this world has declined drastically, and that the magical levels that he experienced as the Lightning Emperor are now considered a myth. When Fraser wakes up, he demands an explanation, but Eftel twists the story, saying that Fraser used to win magic and got a log of wood smacked into his head, causing him to drop unconscious. From then on, Eftel commits not to expose his true abilities to the world and decides to play along about joining military school. Day by day, he trains his swordsmanship with Fraser, but having the abdominal spirit makes Eftel a person who refuses to lose, and it only makes him stronger each day. 3 more years pass by, and Eftel is now capable of using swordsmanship and martial arts to a high degree, believing that being a magical swordsman has its benefits. Just then, Fraser shows up to take him to meet someone, and Fraser introduces Eftel to his new coach in the form of a juggernaut-sized man named Moria, a former knight commander of the Azul Kingdom. Without wasting any time, Moria invites Eftel to attack him, but Eftel doesn't see any opening for him to attack, and fully acknowledges that this man is so powerful that Eftel's legs refuse to move. Seeing this, Moria decides to attack first, forcing Eftel on the defensive and backpedaling. Wanting to even the odds, Eftel uses his mana to enhance his physical ability, and Moria is fully impressed, now understanding why Fraser recommended his own brother. Fraser jumps in and says that he always noticed how Eftel was able to control his mana within his body like he's a real sage, but Moria laughs at this statement, not knowing that Eftel could end this battle with magic if he wanted to. However, Eftel's pride pushes him to win with combat, so he charges forward and Moria responds with a swing, putting Eftel in a tough position. The former Knight Commander tells the former Lightning Emperor that he lacks the strength or the muscle to compete, but suddenly, Eftel turns it around and does a judo move to slam the giant to the ground, surprising Moria. It also surprises Eftel, who recalls how he used to learn judo in his first life, living in a modern world as a human. Moria then shows his props, fully acknowledging that he lost the fight but won the sword battle. Fraser then introduces Moria as the headmaster of the School of Military Science, and that in a few years Eftel will be going there to study properly, shocking Eftel. More years pass by, and Eftel is in the middle of training his magic in the rain, thinking to himself how he loves training in this condition, knowing that nobody will notice. Suddenly, Fraser shows up, scared of the sudden lightning, and orders Eftel to be careful, considering that he's joining military school. Eftel plays along and agrees, while deep down he has already decided that before he joins military school, he will run away from home to pursue magic. Later, Fraser informs Eftel that their father has agreed to meet him, and Elia is more than ecstatic, saying that her son's hard work has paid off. Seeing her and Fraser happy, Eftel decides not to make them sad, so they all go the next day to Duke Orkot's mansion. There they see him and his son walk in, and when Eftel steps forward to introduce himself to his father, the Duke scolds him, telling him to call the Duke by his title. He talks about how Eftel brings shame to the family, considering that he's the direct descendant of the Lightning Emperor, not knowing that he's talking to the Lightning Emperor himself. However, when the Duke finds out that Eftel is going to military school, he starts being joyful, and Eftel thinks for a moment that maybe his father is finally proud of him. However, the Duke quickly proves that he's a massive pig, and he talks about how he will stop sending Eftel's mother money, considering that military school will pay Eftel and feed him. Then he tells his beloved son Joaquin that he needs to ensure that Eftel doesn't bring shame to the family, so he orders Joaquin to teach Eftel a lesson. They take the lesson to the mansion's training ground, and there, Fraser warns his little brother that Joaquin is a high-level swordsman, so if Eftel feels like he can't win, then he should surrender. Joaquin then hands Eftel a wooden sword, and it surprises Eftel with how heavy it is. Joaquin explains that it's a hardwood sword, capable of destroying someone's skull, and he intends to use it to hurt Eftel. He expresses how, as the Duke's oldest son, he wants to murder Eftel and his pig of a mother for bringing shame to their family by having no magical aptitude. He then invites Eftel to strike first, mocking him for being the son of a trashy hoe, but that angers Eftel, refusing to accept that these people are actually his descendants. He attacks Joaquin head-on, delivering swing after swing, shocking Joaquin, forcing him to block. As Eftel's sword moves forward, Eftel enhances his strength using his mana, and that pushes the sword, crushing Joaquin's skull and sending him flying. Everyone watches in shock as Joaquin is defeated, and the former Lightning Emperor warns Joaquin that if he ever talks badly about his mother again, he will crush his dangleberries and turn them into juice. Eftel then goes to his mother after defending her dignity, and tells her that they should go home. Elia looks at her son like she doesn't recognize him, but he assures her that he is still the same beloved son that she knows. Eftel then turns to his frightened father to thank him for the invitation, and the Duke simply wishes him luck for the military school while hoping it won't be his skull that gets crushed next. Weeks later, things return to normal, even though Eftel fully expects Joaquin or his father to have the revenge. Just then, someone knocks on their door, and when they open, they are surprised to see Fraser and Moria carrying a little baby. The two knights explain that back at the kingdom, a war is brewing, and that the little prince is being targeted for assassination. They deem Elia's home to be their only safe place, considering Fraser's own father to be the culprit behind the assassination. Fraser reveals that the king's own son is being targeted by his uncle, whose son is supposed to become the next king, and that Duke Orkot is helping the uncle so he can stay in power. The next morning, Fraser and Moria head out to take the little prince to their main army for protection. But then, Eftel decides to join them in protecting the little prince, remembering how in his past life, his king was extremely supportive in his battles against the demon army. They then leave, leaving Elia in tears, seeing her beloved son fighting for a cause against his own father. On their journey, they go through a forest, but they notice that something about the forest is eerie and that there are no animals around them. Suddenly, they hear thunder roaring loudly and realize that there's something wrong. Prioritizing their own and the little prince's safety, they run to escape the forest without looking back, hoping to get out of it unscathed. But right as they get to the edge of the forest, they stop in shock, seeing a whole army of the Duke's mages facing them and the Duke himself leading that army. When they try to turn back, they realize that the forest has been set on fire by the mages, with the intention of pushing and driving them out of it. With nowhere to run, Fraser tells the others that he will negotiate with his own father, believing that despite his trash-like attitude, his father is not a bad person. Fraser then steps forward, arms in the air to show that he's unarmed, and he screams to his father to talk to him. She pleads for his father to stop this madness and that they all should go back to the capital to bring back peace. Seeing Fraser is begging, the Duke decides to meet him face to face, and Fraser is more than happy to see his father being reasonable. Fraser joyfully expresses how glad he is to see his father as a good man, but the second that the Duke is within distance, he pulls out a magical taser and electrocutes his own son, calling him a roadblock to his goals. He then signals his mages to attack, and they summon a level 6 lightning spell, completely demolishing Fraser. Seeing all of this evil, Eftal couldn't hold back his anger, knowing that his kind brother was just trying to be a good person and helpful to others. He declares that the Duke will pay, and Moria is confused by the change of aura surrounding Eftal. The former Lightning Emperor then steps up and uses a level 9 water spell, Causitis, completely freezing everything around them and blowing out the fire in the forest, shocking all the mages that are watching. With an aura full of bloodlust, Eftal intends to show a lesson to his own descendant on what magic can truly be. Seeing Eftal, the Duke orders his mages to blow him to smithereens, and they cast a fire spell at Eftal, causing explosions all over, making them all think that they have won. To their absolute fear, Eftal is left without a scratch, as he activates his automatic defense barrier that outclasses any mages of this era. Out of desperation, the Duke orders his mages to deliver their most powerful spell, and they use a lightning spell called Eftal, but the real Eftal watches in disgust to see his own spell against him. So he blocks their attacks with ease. Wanting to end this fight, Eftal blitzes straight to them and chops them using his sword, the same one his brother taught him to use. Eftal then integrates magic into his blade, and when one mage tries to attack him, Eftal turns him into dust. Seeing this horror, the other mages try to run away, but Eftal refuses to let that happen, so he decides to show them what true lightning magic is like. With his hands to the air, he chants the magic spell he created in his past life, shaking the weather itself with a level 10 Eftal. It leaves the Duke and Joaquin still alive, and when Eftal approaches, Joaquin tries to mock him but gets electrocuted. Eftal then faces his father and tells him that he will be punished for trying to assassinate the crown prince. The Duke tries to speak, but Eftal refuses to listen and electrocutes him, deeming him a pathetic father who tried to attack his son. It ends with the Duke and Joaquin getting executed, while Fraser turns out to be okay, explaining that the family jewelry saved him, which Eftal knows belongs to him in his past life. The two of them embrace, and Eftal thanks his older brother for being alive and for everything that he did. After what the Duke did, his mansion and his power were given to Fraser. As for Eftal, he decides to show Fraser and Moria the extent of his true powers. The trio decides that it will be a secret between the three of them, knowing that the world will be in an uproar if they find out someone possessed this level of power. They then ask Eftal what he's planning to do, and he informs them that he's planning to go to magic school, believing that the academy has the answers for his pursuit of magic. The two accept his answer, and they fully embrace Eftal in his new journey. After a whole year of more training under Moria and Fraser, it's time for Eftal to go on his journey. His mother tearfully hugs him, expressing how much she's proud of him, and how he is always welcome to come home. After the embrace, Eftal sets out on his journey, while his family cheer on, with his mind fully committed to reaching the great heights of magic. After hours of walking, Eftal runs into a civilization and decides to take a break. There, he finds a tea house and decides to grab some drinks there. However, the mood turns sour when he watches an old C-rank sorcerer getting bullied by an absolute scumbag A-ranked adventurer called Edwards. The old man simply asks the A-ranked adventurer to teach the local children some magic, expressing how much they would appreciate it, but the A-ranked adventurer tells this old geezer that his time is precious compared to the old man's time, and that he will spend the night finally claiming his prize to crack the demon girl in his hand, after months of waiting for her slave crest to latch onto her body. Seeing this fills Eftal with disgust, knowing that this poor demon girl is about to become this dude's disposable toy, and it reminds Eftal of Merlin, who he knows would have ended up the same way if he hadn't adopted her. Suddenly, a villager rushes in panic, and he informs them of an emergency that a giant orc has shown up. Eftal hurries himself to confront it, and finds the local villagers all panicking, saying how there are no knights or high-level adventurers around to deal with the giant orc. But the old C-ranked geezer calms them down and states that Edwards of the Mad Flame will save them, which immediately fills the people with hope. Edwards then claims that giant orcs are B-ranked monsters, which are nothing compared to his A-ranked adventurer status. Everyone watching is completely rizzed up by Edwards' charm, and even Eftal is a bit relieved to find that adventurers are still powerful in this era. Edwards then makes a grandeur of a performance in front of everyone and casts a level 4 fire magic at the giant orc, probably claiming that it is his most powerful magic. He then turns around to face the people to embrace their cheers, but to his confusion, everyone is frightened by something. Behind Edwards, the giant orc gets back up unscathed, and after getting blown, it is now pissed. In this moment, Edwards realizes that he's actually facing an orc berserker, which is leagues above his level, and that his magic is not enough to defeat it. Being the coward that he is, Edwards suddenly runs away from everyone and creates a barrier that traps the villagers with the orc berserker, essentially sacrificing them. He claims that someone as valuable as him cannot die here, so everyone else should sacrifice themselves for his sake. The orc berserker then approaches the villagers, staring at them like they're fresh meat. However, before anything happens, Eftal breaks the barrier with ease, freeing everyone and shocking Edward. Eftal knows that he is drawing too much attention, but he also knows that he can't just do nothing, so he starts thinking hard and comes up with a solution. Using his fire magic, he's planning to cast a level 3 spell as bait, and then cast a level 9 spell to defeat the orc without anyone knowing. He does exactly that, casting a level 3 spell, but to his and everyone's surprise, the spell is more than enough to defeat the orc berserker, burning it to a crisp, shocking Edwards. Everyone talks about how cool Eftal is, and the old man watches and realizes that, unlike Edward's way of using magic, Eftal uses magic in its purest and most perfect form, making his level 3 way more powerful than Edward's level 4 magic. Realizing that all the attention is on him, Eftal tries to explain himself and says that it's a fluke. However, everyone is more mesmerized by the berserker getting burned to crispy bacon, and they want to eat him. So Eftal uses this chance to walk away, but before he escapes that area, he tells Edward that the old man is way smarter than Edward, and that he should always respect the elders. That makes the old man tear up, but Eftal continues and says that after what Edward did with the barrier, it's considered attempted murder. So Eftal orders Edward to let go of his slave and turn himself in as a criminal, to which Edward agrees to do out of fear of Eftal's power. Then, Eftal continues on his journey, but right on his tail is the slave girl following him. When he goes to confront her, she asks him to become her master, and her charm almost makes Eftal fold on his knees. She then starts begging, saying how she'll be arrested as an escaped slave if he refuses to be her master. Eftal knows that when slaves lose their master, other people could easily take their place, and it scares him if that someone is like P. Diddy. He done asks how a demon like her gets enslaved, and the girl explains how ever since the demon clan lost to the human nations, her clan has become slaves. She then reveals that her name is Anastasia, and that she is a noble relative of the Magical Academy's headmistress, Merlin. The second Eftal hears that name, he demands Anastasia to elaborate, and Anastasia explains that after becoming the Lightning Emperor's student, Merlin ended up as the greatest demon mage in history. Hearing that brings tears to Eftal's eyes, now knowing that his beloved student turned out okay after 400 years. With that in mind, he accepts becoming Anastasia's master, refusing to let a relative of Merlin suffer. They then reach a town that Eftal explains will be holding the entrance exam for the Magical Academy, and Anastasia doesn't understand why he would want to even enroll, considering how powerful he already is. Before they find a place to sleep, they decide to go eat, and Anastasia is shocked to find that Eftal is taking her to an expensive restaurant. Inside, the waiters and the customers are all disgusted to see a slave in their presence. Eftal then takes a seat, but is surprised to find Anastasia kneeling right beside him instead of sitting across from him. When he asks her what she's doing, Anastasia explains that it's a custom for all slaves to kneel beside their masters, just in case their masters need some good old Gok Gok 3000. Seeing this, Eftal gives out his first order, and that is for Anastasia to take his hand and sit across from him. The second she sits down, she feels happiness with how comfortable it is. But then the head waiter pops up and confronts them, telling them that slaves are not allowed, and that broke bums like Eftal are not welcome. He asks if Eftal even has the money to pay for boiled water, and Eftal pulls out stones. That shocks the head waiter, as he realizes that they are dragon drops, which are worth a whole village of kidneys. Eftal shows that he has more if it's not enough, but the head waiter quickly changes his tune and tells his workers to move Eftal and Anastasia to the VIP room and prepare all the best meats for them. Then, in the VIP room, they are served meat dishes straight from Gordon Ramsay's kitchen, and while Eftal is excited to eat, Anastasia hesitates. Seeing her like this, Eftal tells her that he's happy to have her around, and that if he ever makes her upset, he wants her to tell him about it like she's his equal. The next day, they reach Krone Magical Academy, where Anastasia is grateful that Eftal brought her new clothes. She then asks why magical academies are so popular, and Eftal explains that graduating from one would guarantee them jobs, but that makes the place hyper-competitive. That gives him an idea, and he suggests that Anastasia should also try getting in, considering anyone is allowed to try. She wonders if she can do it, but Eftal is more than confident that she can, knowing that she has more magical talent than most people, considering that she's a relative of Merlin. Then, the exam begins, and for the first one, it's announced to be a battle royal. The exam proctor introduces himself as Franz. He explains that the battle royale will continue until there are only 5 people standing. He starts with 50 people first, convinced that just like any other year, no one there will impress him. He then sees that everyone quickly targets Eftal and Anastasia, and he suspects that it's because they're the weakest there. Suddenly people start flying, and when he looks down he sees Eftal kicking people to eliminate them from the battle royale. It impresses Franz to see Eftal using enhancement magic, but he believes that it will now turn him into a target. People then charge at Eftal, but Anastasia quickly does an incantation to activate a spell, and she blows them all away, shocking everyone there with the high-level spell she just did. She quickly asks Eftal if she went too far, but Eftal assures her that she's fine, and that he always knew that she had talent. He then mentions how Anastasia can't use spells without an incantation, and Franz laughs watching this, believing that Eftal doesn't even know the basics of magic. Anastasia then tells Eftal how magic spells need incantations, but he tells her that she's wrong, and he proves it by activating multiple level 4 spells at once without an incantation, which ends with everyone getting blown away and Franz instantly qualifying them to pass the first test. The next round they take a written test, and due to having his past life knowledge, Eftal easily breezes through the test, but he notes that there's insane numbers of questions to solve. After the time is up, he tells Anastasia about how he just managed to answer all the questions, but he or she tells him that he was only supposed to answer the questions relating to his field and not the whole test, which ends with him shocking the academy, with him getting the highest score in history. The headmaster immediately suspects that Eftal cheated on his test, and when he finds out that Eftal is named after the Lightning Emperor, he feels insulted, refusing to let some cheater possess the name of one of the 4 legendary saints. However, Franz walks in and informs them of what happened in the first exam, where Eftal used multiple level 4 spells without incantations, which is basically unheard of. With that in mind, Franz believes that Eftal finishes the written test fair and square, and that makes everyone suspect that he might be the second coming of the Lightning Emperor. Afterward, everyone gathers in front of the scoreboard to see whether they passed, and Anastasia gleefully hugs Eftal, telling him that because of his help she manages to qualify to join the special class. When they realize everyone is watching, she quickly stops the hug, but Eftal still congratulates her for finally getting a chance to live like a normal student. Eftal then goes to find his number on the scoreboard, and to his confusion his name is not there, which shocks him and makes him think that he failed due to his magical aptitude. Refusing to let this slide, Anastasia intends to complain to the academy and demand an explanation. However, as she walks away, she sees a special announcement that announces the special elite students, and among them, Eftal's name is presented. Anastasia expresses how happy she is, and while Eftal is relieved that he passed, he has no clue what it means to be a special elite student. Later, they discover that special elite students have extreme benefits where they get free food, free place to live, and even money. But when Eftal checks it himself, it also includes representing the school and being the school mascot, which is something Eftal has no interest in. All he wants from his school life is to use the library, learn how to bypass his magical aptitude, and avoid any attention, but he now knows that it will be difficult. Just then, they walk past a white-haired busty babe, and in that instant, Eftal recognizes her as Merlin. He quickly hides, confused on why the headmaster of Altina Magic Academy is here in this academy. Eftal knows that Merlin will recognize him instantly, considering he has the same face as his old self, and that it will cause trouble if people know he is the reincarnation of the Lightning Emperor. So he decides to quickly sneak his way out of there. But the second he leaves, Merlin senses her old master's presence and screams for him. She quickly looks around, and when he sees Eftal walking away, she goes after him and intercepts his path, putting them face to face. Without beating around the bush, she asks if Eftal is related to the Lightning Emperor. Not wanting unwanted attention, Eftal quickly drags Anastasia, and they run away to get lunch. While eating, Eftal discovers that Anastasia doesn't recognize what Merlin looks like, and he finds out that Anastasia is actually an extremely distant cousin of Merlin, which he understands why Anastasia doesn't recognize her. Later, the students are gathered by the Crone Magic Academy's principal, and he congratulates them for passing the test and joining the academy. He then introduces Altina Magic Academy's principal, Merlin, to them and explains that she's here as a guest. She steps forward and starts giving welcoming words to the students, and Eftal is glad that he won't have to deal with her as a teacher. But then the school representative is asked to deliver a speech, and Eftal realizes that he's screwed the second his name gets introduced. Everyone gossips about how he's the god-level student who inherits the name of the Lightning Emperor, and when Eftal steps forward, he goes face-to-face with Merlin, who is not happy to see him. Later, Eftal is surrounded by girls, all wanting a piece of his pickle, while Anastasia can only watch, thinking how she lost her place as the main hoe. But then the real main girl arrives in the form of Merlin, and she directly confronts Eftal, which scares off the girls. She then sits down and asks him if he knows about reincarnation. That shocks him, and he remembers how Merlin was always clever and that she probably had already figured him out. Eftal tries playing stupid, but she shows him his exams and reveals that while his exam answers are all correct, all of his answers are methods and formulas that were only used by people 400 years ago. She softens up and tells him how he reminds her of someone important to her, and that whenever her old master is involved, she can feel her sugar walls twitching. Eftal is tempted to just come out and reveal the truth, knowing that cheeks are gonna get cracked, but he reminds himself of his goal to study magic, so he decides to improvise. He then whispers to her that the Lightning Emperor had a hidden lover, which resulted in his great-great-great-grandfather being born. And while the great-grandpa had incredible magical aptitude, he was hidden from the world and had to practice his abilities in the forest with the Lightning Emperor as his teacher. Merlin furiously refuses to accept this, but Eftal tells her that he knows how the Lightning Emperor died after finding out he had no magical aptitude. Merlin quickly shuts him up, telling him that it's a secret kept from the world to avoid damaging the Emperor's image. But with that, she's finally convinced, and Eftal introduces himself as the 13th generation of the Lightning Emperor's descendant. She accepts his words as the truth and expresses how it hurts that she never knew the Lightning Emperor had a lover. However, she is now more interested to see which of their clan inherited the Lightning Emperor's belief in becoming the strongest. And Eftal realizes that for 400 years, Merlin has been training endlessly to fulfill her master's goal. Marlin then offers for Eftal's training session later. They test out each other's magical ability. Eftal panics, knowing that it will attract attention, but because of his never-back-down attitude and his curiosity to see her student's strength after 400 years, Eftal accepts her challenge. The news about their duel spreads around the academy, with everyone in disbelief to hear that a mere student is going against not only a teacher, but the demon hero herself, Merlin. The two of them are put face-to-face in a battle arena, while the rest of the students and teachers watch, expecting to see an absolute masterclass in magic from someone like Merlin, but also to see what a new face in Eftal is able to do. Eftal starts by suggesting they test each other's strength with a little spell, and Merlin agrees to it. But Eftal activates a level 6 flare burst without incantation, surprising Merlin and shocking everyone else. She quickly counters with a level 7 perfect wall to block it, and Eftal is impressed by his former pupil. Seeing that Eftal used a level 6 spell without breaking a sweat, Merlin expresses her amazement at him being Eftal's descendant, but she claims that she is the Lightning Emperor's favorite student, so she refuses to lose. She uses a level 6 fire spell back at Eftal, and Eftal responds the same way, using a level 7 perfect wall. But then, Merlin rises up to the sky and uses a second level 6 fire spell straight at Eftal, shocking everyone, and proudly claims that only true students from the great teacher, the Lightning Emperor, can use 2 spells back-to-back without incantations. However, Eftal tells her that he knows and uses a level 7 ice spell to freeze the fire first, surprising everyone, before following it up with another ice spell, knowing that chain casting is a technique that he created himself. Merlin blocks the giant ice spear with another perfect wall, but Eftal wastes no time and keeps going with his offense, chain casting even more ice spells. Seeing that she's able to block all of it, he casts an almost missile-like ice spell from the sky, which Merlin clocks from how refined the spell is. She quickly blocks it with a perfect wall, struggling to contain the force that the ice spell carried. The ice spell pushes her back, creating cracks in her defense, and Eftal tells her that while her magical purity is excellent, her casting is imperfect. Hearing all of this from him, Merlin can't help but feel like she's back being mentored by her beloved Eftal, seeing how her flaws are being pointed out in the middle of action. Refusing to lose, she multicasts 2 level 7 perfect walls side by side to successfully defend herself, but Eftal points out that multicasting uses up a lot of mana. Seeing her tired, Eftal quickly follows up with an attack, but Merlin quickly uses teleport to go behind him, and quickly casts another powerful fire spell, shocking everyone who's watching. Everyone there thinks that the battle is over, except for Merlin, who knows that Eftal is right behind her, after also using teleport. She gleefully tells him that he used the same technique as her teacher 400 years ago, and she expresses that the fact he looks like him, and even has his name, makes her smile. Then, she tells him that her next move will be her ultimate trump card, saying that if he can withstand her most powerful spell, she will admit defeat. Eftal welcomes that challenge, and when Merlin uses a level 8 lightning, Thor's hammer, he is surprised to see that her ultimate spell is such a weak one. He easily dodges it, but then notices another magic circle on her left hand, realizing she's casting another Thor's hammer, which almost hits him, but he just manages to avoid. But suddenly, he notices a third magic circle on her leg, which also casts another Thor's hammer, almost hitting Eftal, and he is surprised to see his former pupil have a trick like that up her sleeve. But then, he sees a fourth magic circle, revealing her true most powerful spell in the form of quad casting, which truly impresses him. While Merlin charges up her ultimate spell, Eftal starts laughing in amazement, seeing how much his former pupil has evolved, and even acknowledging how a mage of her caliber didn't exist in his era. It brings him back to when he was her teacher, and he now fully remembers exactly the reason why she was his favorite student. Wanting to respect her absolute best, Eftal charges up his own ultimate move to answer Merlin's ultimate spell. She then shoots her Thor's hammer with 4 different magic circles, which Eftal knows is unheard of, and he responds directly with his level 10 spell, which uses his own name, Eftal, and completely overwhelms the battle arena. It absorbs Merlin's spell, which she knows is impossible, and shoots it back at her to finish her off. In that moment, she remembers that the only person capable of doing this was her own master, the Lightning Emperor himself, Eftal. But before the spell hits her, Eftal quickly uses Magic Cancel to cancel his spell, and everyone there watches clearly as Merlin falls down from the sky, descending in her defeat. However, after what she's seen just now, she fully believes that there's no chance that this little Jit is the Lightning Emperor's descendant, but instead knows that there's only one person who this little Jit could be. She asks Eftal directly if he is a reincarnation of Eftal, and unable to hide it no longer, he admits that he is, knowing that she would find out sooner or later. He then caresses her head, praising her for the amazing last spell she attempted and how far she has come since the days of her being his little pupil. That makes Merlin emotional, knowing now that he's alive again and that she can be by his side like before. Suddenly, Anastasia runs towards them, and when Merlin lays eyes on her, she accuses Eftal of already having a slave this early on. Eftal quickly explains that he was merely helping Anastasia, and when Merlin gets a good look at her, she chooses to believe that Eftal had a good reason to have Anastasia beside him. But then, Anastasia tells them that there's a problem, and they realize that everyone there is running towards them, wanting Eftal to showcase his magic some more, and even become a new teacher. Merlin asks Eftal what he's doing in a magical academy, and when he tells her that he simply wants to learn more about magic, Merlin gets an idea. She quickly grabs his hand and drags him away, while Anastasia follows them. After a few hours of walking, Eftal recognizes the roads that they are on, and to his amazement, he sees where his old mansion was once standing, realizing that Merlin took care of it for the past 400 years. Then, Merlin tells the 2 students to wait here while she finishes up some documents, explaining that she's planning to make them fake identities as her apprentices. Eftal quickly calms her down to ask what she's planning to do, and she tells him that since he wants to learn about magic, using her power as headmaster, she will enroll both Eftal and Anastasia in her academy, Altina Academy. She believes that it's a good idea, considering she will not have the chance to go to school with him, and even eat lunch beside him. But when Eftal thinks about it, he realizes that he can study all he wants, especially since the headmaster of the academy knows his secret, so he agrees to the plan and hugs Merlin, which is a gesture this busty elf enjoys. Afterward, while Merlin finishes up their paperwork, she allows Eftal and Anastasia to go anywhere, and Eftal takes Anastasia to his old treasury. When she asks him why they're here, he explains that he wants to go to the treasury to take back his beloved sword, Reincarnating. But suddenly, a genie lamp pops up, and from it, out comes a red-colored, pissed-off genie, who tells them to scram. The genie calls the duo a pair of thieves, and warns them that they will be hurt if they don't go away. Eftal states that he's here to get back his katana, Reincarnating, and the genie laughs, saying that the katana is a triple S-ranked blade that the great Eftal brought back from the Demon King's castle after defeating him, so the genie tells these 2 brats that they have no right to see it. He once more tells them to get lost, saying that he will let them off, knowing that they are Merlin's students. He then starts expressing his hatred for Merlin, who he calls an old hack who likes to boss him around, and even adds insult to injury about her old master Eftal, who the genie says is a fraud who has no magical aptitude and probably cheated his way to becoming one of the 4 great emperors. Despite the disrespect, Eftal stays silent and demands to know Reincarnating's location. The genie happily shows it to him, but warns Eftal that only Merlin can touch it, considering that it has a magical barrier protecting it. However, Eftal couldn't give a flying turd and goes to use a level 8 perfect dispel, which allows him to swing Reincarnating around, shocking the genie. Just then, Merlin pops up, completely pissed off with how the genie called her an old hag, revealing that she heard him from outside the mansion, completely scaring the genie. But when she notices Eftal with Reincarnating in his hand, she changes attitude drastically and welcomes him to his old treasury. When the genie hears Eftal's name and thinks about how he manages to use a level 8 spell without any incantation, he realizes that he is facing the real deal. So he quickly goes on his knees and apologizes to the great emperor himself, begging for forgiveness, and Eftal calmly forgives him, informing him that he and Anastasia will start living there, so the genie should start remembering their faces. Meanwhile, while everyone is talking, Anastasia keeps staring at the sword, feeling uneasy. Later, Merlin takes the 2 around town, where Eftal notices how a lot of the stores haven't changed in 400 years. There, Merlin takes them shopping to prepare for them to live there, including getting uniforms and whatnot. After a day of shopping, one shopkeeper informs them that there is a treasure hunt happening, where the winner is crowned by finding the most treasures, and that they are allowed to keep the treasures, and even get a free trip to a hot spring. The trio thinks about it, and Eftal finds Anastasia pondering deeply about the hot spring. Realizing that she wants to go, Eftal decides that they should join the treasure hunt. Anastasia is delighted to hear that, but she informs them that she was never interested in the hot springs, and instead is simply interested in getting the treasures. Merlin looks at the treasure hunt poster, which has the treasure they're looking for, and is confused about why she wants a midget-looking gold statue. When Eftal sees her fidgeting around to answer, he simply says that she doesn't have to tell them the reason why, and simply accepts what she wants, which makes her happy. Anastasia then suggests that they use the level 8 Perfect Dispel, like what Eftal just did, but Merlin informs her that it would erase all spells around the city, which would be a catastrophe for people around them. However, Eftal says that they can simply focus their spell on certain targets, and Merlin is surprised to know that he's able to do that. With their plans made, Eftal uses a level 5 magic jammer, and it helps them to track down all the treasures within an hour, which gives them the victory, the hot spring trip, and the little gold man that Anastasia wanted. Then, Anastasia reveals the truth that the reason she wanted the little gold statue is that it reminded her of how Eftal smiled, and Eftal is flustered to hear that. Later that night, Merlin approaches Eftal in private to tell him of something urgent. She tells him that after bathing with Anastasia, she has checked the goods and made sure that her plots are good enough to comply with Eftal's glorious pickle. Eftal quickly smacks her and tells her that she and Anastasia don't have that kind of relationship. Merlin then apologizes, but brings up another issue, and that is the slave crest that is on Anastasia's body. She tells Eftal that the crest is a ticking time bomb if Eftal chooses to let Anastasia stay with him, insisting that he do something about it, but Eftal hits the table and sternly tells Merlin that she should never question his decision. Hearing this, Merlin apologizes once more. The next day, Eftal and Anastasia starts their first day in the academy, and every student there glares at Eftal for being the only human there, deeming him as a lesser being who has no reason to be in the school full of demons and elves. However, while Anastasia is worried about this situation, Eftal convinces himself that all that matters is that he can study magic in peace. When they get to class, they receive the same treatment, especially from a snobbish demon named Abe, who is fully convinced that the only reason a human like Eftal managed to join this academy is because of his rich and important parents paying off the higher-ups to let him in. Abe arrogantly asks him if he can keep up, and Eftal says he'll try his best, but that pisses off Abe, who insists that Eftal's presence as a human who's weak in magic is an insult to the other students, who Abe believes are the best of the best, hence why they managed to join the academy. Eftal and Anastasia then take a seat, but another demon, Maria, approaches them and apologizes for Abe's annoying behavior. She tells them that she doesn't discriminate against other races, and while she admits that humans aren't liked in that academy, Maria simply discriminates against weaklings, as she refuses to be in the same class as failures. So she tells Eftal, who is a human, to stay out of their sight for his own good. After all of this treatment, Eftal can only admit that they're right, remembering how his own brother was considered a great mage despite only being able to use a level 2 spell, while Anastasia is considered weak despite being able to use a level 3 spell. Then the class starts, and to their shock, Merlin walks in and introduces herself as their new teacher for this year. Everyone recognizes her as the demon hero above all demons, and they are hyped to know that they will be learning under her in class. Ape arrogantly stands up and claims that Merlin is here because of him, but Merlin tells this bozo she has no clue about his existence, and she boldly reveals that the reason she's in that class is because of the human. That surprises everyone, and Abe demands an explanation. He fully believes that the only reason Eftal is here is because of his rich daddy, but Merlin tells him that only pathetic bums like Abe believe in stereotypes like that. She then strongly states that having Eftal here is a great chance for them to destroy that stereotype, and while Merlin is happy about her statement, Eftal is pissed, knowing his peaceful life of learning magic is coming to an end. Later, Anastasia overhears Eftal getting pressed by Abe and his goons. Abe confidently assumes that Eftal was nothing but a pet project who became Merlin's teacher's pet due to him being handsome. Eftal tries to defend Merlin, and when that pisses off Abe, Eftal quickly backs off to avoid any conflict, wishing that he could avoid Abe from now on. Later, during class, Merlin announces the upcoming interclass battle, and she's looking for a magical swordsman. She asks if anyone wants to volunteer, and she keeps pressing Eftal to raise his hand, but he refuses and stays low. Abe then probably raises his hand, and everyone there knows he's the best swordsman. However, to Eftal's surprise, Anastasia also raises her hand, But then, to his shock, she volunteers Eftal to become the magical swordsman, meaning that he will rival Abe for the same position, completely pissing off the snobbish demon. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you watched up to this point and want the next episode recapped, comment down magical swordsman. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out this next video. It might just be your favorite anime recapped.